So imagine you're a kid again, sitting side by side with your best friend, just whiling away the hours playing terrible flash games when he looks over at you, gets a kinda creepy looking grin, and says, "Hey dude, wanna see something crazy?" You know, cause that's what a kid sounds like. And he types in some website you've never heard of before, and then you see this. Boom! Your world will never be the same. So it may be kind of hard to remember considering just how much we have access to nowadays, but back then, the idea that you could just go to a place and watch a video, any video you wanted, that was practically unheard of. But on that fateful day in 2007, I didn't know it yet, but I had come across something that would genuinely change everything. A little site by the name of YouTube. This was a magical place where anyone with an idea could upload whatever they wanted for the entire world to see. Now don't get me wrong, there's a lot to love about current YouTube as well, but there was a certain magic to this era that was unlike anything else. There was no incentive to upload at the time, no monetization, no brand deals, no raid, Shadow Legends, just a bunch of people trying to entertain each other. Just people with ideas they wanted to share. Sure, weird ideas, sometimes ideas that make me embarrassed to admit I enjoyed them, like seriously, what was wrong with me, why did I like this? But there were plenty of other genuinely entertaining series, ones that shaped the kind of person I am today. Like, I know that's a little weird to say, but these memories are really important to me. Okay, I know, this stuff is weird, but just trust me, some of it is freaking great. And since this era of YouTube often gets overlooked, I think it's about time I gave it some love. Someone has to. And obviously, I didn't watch everything on YouTube. Like, listen, I had a lot of free time, but not that much free time. So how about you share what videos you used to watch back then? The good, the bad, the absolutely cringe, I want to hear it all. And with that, get your Unregistered Hypercam 2 ready, and be sure to rate 5 stars because we're going back in time. So, where do we even freaking start with this video? One of the things that was so cool about YouTube at the time was the sheer variety of things you could watch. Like animations, there's something here for you. Like creepy stuff, there's something here for you. Have terrible taste? Like I did? Yeah, there's stuff for you here too. But here's the thing, no matter what kept you on the platform, what likely brought you to the platform was the exact same thing that brought me to it. The weird, short, nonsensical little videos that had virtually no meaning and yet somehow managed to entertain me for hours. Probably because it was a little too simple to please. So yeah, YouTube just had a knack for making the absolute weirdest stuff popular. A lot of the early viral videos on the platform would just kind of appear, and for some reason we just kind of ate all this stuff up. Kid bites some other kid's finger, comedy gold. This kid likes turtles, comedy gold. Banana dancing to peanut butter jelly time, wow, this is comedy gold. Okay, yeah, but it was when I was a kid and I don't know what that says about me, but who cares? This stuff was my jam. You see, we didn't know it at the time, but these little viral videos, they'd all end up being classified under this relatively unknown little word at the time, memes. And like, yeah, I would hear the word, but I sure didn't know what it meant at the time, nor did I really care. I just liked using it. All we really cared about was quoting all these dumb little videos to our friends. You see, one of the whole appeals of this is that at the time, this site was still relatively unknown, so a lot of these videos felt like in-jokes you had to be in the know to actually, well, no. Sure, my friends saying, "I'm a firing my laser," was a hilarious reference at the time to us, but to most regular people, they would just be like, "Wow, that's really weird." And they were right. But still, it was really cool to think that we had this set of underground jokes that you'd only get if you were on YouTube. But you had to be careful, because if you dug too deep into this stuff, you'd end up on the weird side of YouTube. It was just this place you'd end up without knowing it, and boy, you'd find some interesting stuff. But like, that was part of the fun. You just never really knew what you'd find, whether it was trash, pure gold, or a little bit of both. That feeling of diving straight into the weird side of YouTube was unlike anything else. It's sad that this weird side doesn't really exist anymore, but what are you gonna do? Regardless, these weird little memes were great on their own, but there was an aspect that made a lot of them stick out a lot more in my memory, at least. Music. It was a pretty commonly enjoyed little thing, but YouTube just had this funny way of making the strangest music popular. All these kids and their Lady Gagas and their Katy Perrys and their Justin Bieber, I don't know what kids listen to. And here's me listening to this kind of stuff. Yeah, YouTube pretty much completely destroyed any chance of me having a normal taste in music. Not sure if that was for the better or worse that I listened to this kind of stuff growing up, but you know what? I don't care. This stuff is freaking banging. So yeah, music would just get associated with some popular meme, and then somehow it would become a popular meme in and of itself. Didn't matter when it got released, didn't matter if it was even in English, and heck, it didn't even matter if it was good. YouTube could and would make it popular. So, for example, anyone remember being in this kind of situation? You were just roaming around the site, and then suddenly, I can get infinite money in Plants vs. Zombies? I can't wait. and in mere moments, one single drum beat would crush all your hopes. Yeah, I got rickrolled quite a bit as a kid. Chalk it up to me being a little too trusting of people on the internet. I used to get so mad. Damn you, Rick Astley! But I actually started liking the song eventually. Like now, when someone sends me this, it's just like, I love you. And like, think about this. People took a song from 1987 that pretty much had no relevance at all and made it one of the biggest memes ever. That was just the power YouTube had over music. I found a lot of songs to fall in love with, and oftentimes under the strangest circumstances as well. I remember finding some random video of Super Mario 64 that introduced me to Scatman John, which, let me just say, you know how freaking hard it is to find a song when all you have to go by is typing Bee-Bop-Bop-Bada-Bo song in the search bar? It wasn't great. YouTube is also the reason why the high-pitched version of Every Time We Touch sounds like the correct one to me, why I first heard the kinda good Hamster Dance song, and why I associate online tutorials with one single song. And while YouTube was obviously a good place to find some weird music that already existed, it also allowed a whole new group of people to make songs unlike anything we'd ever seen before. YouTube was also home to a ton of original music. Now, I didn't spend quite as much time with the YouTube original music, but there were a couple notable exceptions. Chocolate Rain is still an absolute classic, even if I think the melody gets a little bit repetitive, and some person I used to know as a kid ruined it for me by singing it all the time. Moyoho's multiple songified tracks were actually freaking bangers. I straight up forgot about these until I started working on this video, but yeah, some of these were genuinely good. And nothing says edgy kid listening to music through an MP3 player like Your Favorite Martian. That's me. I was the edgy kid. Oh yeah, and there were also really annoying songs that I kept having to hear because my friends kept showing them to me thinking they were hilarious when they weren't. But yeah, music was pretty neato burrito, but let's be real, these things were just appetizers between the big boys, the things that kept me checking people's channels daily, the full-on series. Obviously, a place like this was going to attract people that wanted to do a little more than just a one-off viral video. Plenty of people would make long-running series about a myriad of subjects, and oftentimes would cover things normal TV never would. And I'm speaking from experience here. Being a pretty avid gamer at the time, and still nowadays, could you tell, it was frustrating to see that TV had pretty much nothing for me. But thankfully, YouTube would end up supplying me with the very same thing I had wanted for years, and from people who actually liked games. What a concept. And like, sure, there was a fair share of Potato Cam Let's Plays, and actually, there still is. Shout out to my buddy Amateur Hour 64, who actually pulls it off pretty well. Go subscribe to him. But there was a lot more than this. The obvious introduction to this was the angry video game nerd, who made a ton of angry, vitriolic, and most importantly, hilarious videos on terrible NES games. Like, even if I had no clue what he was talking about half the time, it was kinda cool to look back at an era I had never even heard of before. He, of course, would lead me to other similar gaming YouTubers. People like JonTron and PBG would make hilarious videos that I would watch over and over and over for some reason. Like, I probably watched his 6 Scary Things in Video Games video like 20 times. I'm not joking about that. Tamashi Hiroka actually talked about things I actually played as a kid, being my main source of Pokemon content, which is pretty cool. Like, there was such a wealth of gaming content to watch, all with completely different styles and approaches. But funnily enough, my favorite at the time was a series that was debatably not even really about gaming. The cute Mario Brothers was my absolute favorite thing on YouTube growing up. And yeah, I realize looking at this, it just seems like a bunch of kids talking through toys, and actually now that I think about it, that's not completely false, but honestly, it was a freaking riot. They somehow managed to make a cast of fun characters and interesting interactions with nothing but a bunch of toys, and there's still stuff in this series that cracks me up.
You lied to me, Phil!
Like, to put this into perspective how much this impacted me, when they killed off Kermit the Frog, which was, might I remind you, a freaking toy, it actually made me sad. Like, that's just how well they pulled this series off. It's a little rough around the edges looking back, but it was my childhood. And though I'm a little sad to see that they're finally ending the series, they made my childhood way more fun. I also spent some time watching YouTube animations, though not nearly as much as everything else. YouTube animations at the time were wild and unpredictable. Unrestrained is the word I'd use to describe it. And sure, I watched my fair share of Dragon Ball Z parodies and ASDF movies, you know, that good stuff. But my favorite was easily a little discussed series by the name of the Lazer Collection. It was built around one joke, that being the Shoop the Whoop meme, but somehow they'd end up coming up with all these new ways to make that one-trick pony do more tricks. You might even say it was a blast. Haha, I get it, because that's what the guy says. However, not everything I watched would be what I'd call high quality. You know what time it is.
Hey, it's...
YouTube wasn't just home to quality content, it was also home to mountains and mountains of garbage, and I watched it a lot of it. And so thanks to my young self having terrible taste, I got to revisit this stuff too. Hooray for me. Well, the best of this cringe tube stuff was easily Fred. He was this kid who would just scream and kind of just keep screaming, and he also had a pretty concerning home life, like so concerning that I can't even mention most of it for fear of getting that big old yellow Dolan on this video. So here's the thing though, yeah, the screaming and freakouts that made me laugh as a kid make me want to cry now, but honestly, the sheer absurdity of the borderline psychotic behavior Fred has is freaking hilarious.
Man, they should really start locking their doors.
Oh, and speaking of freakouts, sure, the world's greatest freakout was funny the first time, maybe even the second time, but the 19th time, yeah guys, I think these might be a little fake. Just a smidge. I also used to listen to a lot of song parodies on YouTube, and oh boy, these have not aged well. The OMG so random humor is one thing, but these just don't sound great. And as much as it pains me to admit this, yes, I used to like the Gummy Bear song. Cringe if you must. But the absolute worst thing I watched religiously as a kid had to do with the scariest thing known to man, produce. So, the annoying orange. Why did I like this? What was going through my head? It's one joke repeated every single time for every one of its 5,000 videos. The characters are obnoxious, the jokes aren't funny, and oh boy, they used to make these song parodies which are pure torture. Yeah, some of this was a little rough. Terrible even, but here's the thing, whether it was good or bad, trash or treasure, all of it was just a part of the magic of YouTube. Anyone could make anything they wanted and show it to the entire world, and sure, I don't like all of it nowadays, and heck, some of it is embarrassing to admit that I ever enjoyed it, but that doesn't change the fact that I loved it back then. These creators could make something that was the highlight of my day, or even make a bad day just a little less bad. Sure, looking back, a lot of these have aged quite a bit, but that doesn't take away from the fact that these were important to me, and I imagine for many others as well. I mean, they must have left some kind of impact considering I wouldn't be making these videos without them. And while this era of YouTube has long since faded from prominence, that isn't to say that things are so bad nowadays. After all, there are tons of amazing content creators across the world all doing their best to make the best content they can. And hey, who knows, maybe, just maybe, one day I might be able to do the same thing for someone else that these old videos did for me.